I never thought a regular delivery would turn into a neighborhood spectacle, let alone make the local HOA lose its mind, but that's exactly what happened. It all started on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was expecting a shipment, nothing crazy. Just a big order of supplies I had arranged for a charity event supporting local veterans. But leave it to our infamous HOA Karen to turn a simple delivery into a full-blown drama. The moment the trucks started rolling in, she stormed out of her house like she owned the block phone in hand, robe barely tied, and her usual scowl locked in place. She didn't ask questions. She didn't knock on my door. She just dialed 911 and started shouting about suspicious military activity on her street. I was inside getting coffee when I first heard the sirens. I looked out the window, and I swear half the neighborhood was standing on their lawns, watching as a full police squad rolled up behind the convoy. Now here's where it gets wild. Karen had no clue that the so-called suspicious trucks were actually part of an armed forces convoy officially cleared and escorted for a special community delivery. Yup, real uniformed personnel, all part of a surprise veteran outreach program we had been planning for months. And the supplies: care packages, medical kits, and donated goods for service members and their families. But the moment the officer stepped out and realized who they were dealing with, the energy shifted. Karen's smug look started to fade real fast. She tried to backpedal, but by then the convoy commander had already stepped forward. Calm and composed, but clearly not amused. What happened next? Let's just say things didn't go quite how Karen imagined. And the look on her face when she realized the truth, priceless. You're not going to believe how it all unfolded. So there we were, half the neighborhood frozen in their tracks, police cars lining the street, and Karen still trying to explain to the officer why she thought calling 911 was the responsible thing to do. I could hear her from my driveway, saying something about unmarked trucks, military uniforms, and suspicious activity in a peaceful residential zone. But the thing is, these weren't just any trucks. They were part of a pre-scheduled delivery effort, arranged weeks ago with full clearance from local authorities. Karen, of course, had ignored all the flyers we posted on the community board. She even walked right past one on the way to the mailbox the day before. But that's just how she is, always assuming the worst. Always ready to act like she's running a private security firm instead of an HOA. She didn't know that the man she was trying to argue with was a decorated Marine Corps captain who had served 3 tours overseas. He stood there calm as ever, hands behind his back, letting her dig her own hole deeper with every word. The convoy wasn't small either. There were 3 military-grade trucks, a support van, and a couple of uniformed personnel unloading crates. Everything was organized, respectful, and by the book. Yet Karen decided the sight of camo and coordination meant an invasion was happening on her watch. She was even pointing at one of the crates, accusing it of being some kind of illegal equipment. It was full of first aid kits. The cops, caught between keeping things cool and not laughing, tried to keep a straight face. But the neighbors were whispering. Some were filming. Had a few started to piece things together when they recognized one of the officers from the local Veterans Day parade. But just when we thought it couldn't get more awkward, something happened that changed everything. Just as Karen was mid-rant about military overreach and unauthorized equipment, one of the convoy members walked over an older veteran named Sergeant Lewis, who'd been quietly coordinating the unloading. He gently asked Karen if she'd like to see the contents of the crates for herself. She hesitated, looking between him and the open truck bed like she was trying to decide if this was some sort of trap. He calmly lifted a lid. Inside were stacks of blankets, hygiene kits, and handwritten letters from local school kids. Karen didn't say a word, but she didn't apologize either. Instead, she turned to the nearest officer and insisted that this whole operation didn't look normal. That's when one of the neighbors, Mr. Dorsey, an Army vet himself, stepped in. He told her straight up that she was embarrassing the entire neighborhood and disrespecting people who actually served this country. Karen turned bright red but still refused to back down. That's when it really started to spiral. More neighbors began coming outside, asking questions, filming the scene, some even thanking the service members. A few folks admitted they didn't even know this charity delivery was happening, which made Karen feel like maybe she wasn't entirely out of line, but instead of stepping back, she doubled down. She demanded to see the paperwork authorizing the trucks. Meanwhile, my phone was blowing up. HOA board members, who hadn't even been involved in organizing the delivery, were now scrambling. Apparently, Karen had already posted on the community app about a military breach, and the comments section was going wild. Some people were praising her for being alert. Others were furious that she'd called the cops on active duty personnel helping veterans. Then one of the convoy drivers quietly pulled me aside. He told me they'd run into trouble at another drop-off site that morning another HOA had blocked their access to. That's when I started to wonder if this was just a one-time misunderstanding, or if something bigger was going on. The moment the convoy driver mentioned the earlier HOA conflict, my stomach dropped. This wasn't just Karen being Karen. This was part of a bigger pattern. I asked him what happened at the last stop, and he said it was almost identical. A local board refused to let them unload on the grounds that military vehicles were a disturbance to community peace. The difference was that HOA had already been briefed weeks in advance, just like ours. But someone higher up had suddenly pulled support without warning. Back in my driveway, the tension kept building. Karen was now pacing, arms folded tight, clearly aware that the crowd was no longer on her side, but still too proud to back down. She was whispering into her phone, again probably calling the HOA president, or maybe even trying to get a city inspector out here. Meanwhile, the police were trying to wrap up, but no one wanted to leave while things felt so unresolved. Then came the twist none of us expected. One of the convoy's officers quietly walked over to the lead cop and handed him a sealed document. The officer read it, eyebrows raised, and then asked if he could speak with Karen in private. That didn't sit well with her. She demanded to know what the document said. The officer didn't budge, just asked again, calm but firm. She finally agreed, and the two stepped toward the side of her lawn. Out of earshot at the same time, someone from the HOA board finally arrived. Mr. Stein, the vice president, clearly out of breath and holding a folder of permits. He looked flustered, like he'd just realized what kind of mess he was walking into. I waved him over and explained everything from the beginning. He flipped through the paperwork, stopped cold, and muttered, "No, this isn't right." That's when the real questions started. Who had changed the event details behind our backs? Why were these convoys being blocked in places that had already approved them? And why was Karen so determined to shut it all down? Was she just overreacting? Or was there something else going on entirely? Mr. Stein flipped to the last page of the permit folder and just stared at it for a second, jaw clenched. This version was edited. He finally said under his breath, "This isn't what we submitted." My heart sank. He turned the document around, and there it was, our original event plan, but with new notes scribbled in the margins. Someone had marked the convoy as non-compliant, flagged it under a zoning concern, and suggested it be rerouted. But the signature at the bottom wasn't from the city. It was from a member of our own HOA board. Karen's name, I couldn't believe it. She had taken it upon herself to submit a revision behind everyone's back and used that to justify calling the cops. Mr. Stein looked furious, but more confused than anything. "She doesn't even have authority to do this without a vote," he said. "Why would she go this far?" Just then, Karen walked back from her quiet talk with the officer, looking rattled. "Not angry rattled. She wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, but before I could say anything, one of the convoy members' radios crackled. There was a short exchange, and then the commander's expression tightened. He looked over at the team, gave a quick nod, and suddenly they started securing the crates back into the trucks. Not unpacking, packing, people around us started asking what was going on. A neighbor yelled, "Are they leaving?" I tried to stop one of the soldiers and ask what changed, but all he said was, "New directive. Higher up, we've been ordered to pull out." Now everyone was confused. First, block deliveries. Now, sudden withdrawal orders. Karen looked like she wanted to disappear into the grass. Mr. Stein kept flipping through the pages like he could fix it just by finding the right sentence. Then came the final twist. One of the neighbors pulled out her phone and showed me a post on a private HOA chat group I'd never even seen before. The title of Karen's post: How to Quietly Stop Military Disruptions Before They Take Over the Neighborhood. This wasn't just about one delivery anymore. As soon as I read the title of Karen's post, everything clicked. This wasn't just paranoia, she had been planning this. That private HOA thread had been active for weeks, full of messages where Karen and a few like-minded members shared ways to preserve the neighborhood image by limiting what they called outside influence. In her eyes, even a charity delivery by an armed forces convoy was a disruption. She had twisted the event into a threat, convinced others behind closed doors, and then quietly altered the documents without notifying the rest of the board. Mr. Stein was livid. He grabbed his phone and called an emergency board meeting right there in my driveway. Karen tried to walk away, but he raised his voice and called her back. "You tampered with a legal document and misused HOA authority," he said, holding up the permit. This wasn't just overreach, was a lie. The convoy commander, who had kept calm all morning, finally spoke up. "We've encountered resistance before," he said, "but never from the very community we came to support." His tone wasn't angry, just disappointed. That hit harder than yelling ever could. At that moment, as if scripted by fate, a city official's SUV pulled up. Turns out, someone from the police department had notified the mayor's office when they realized the convoy had been blocked, twice in one day. The official reviewed the paperwork, heard what happened, and overruled the HOA's objections on the spot. With that, the convoy was cleared to complete the delivery. Cheers broke out from the neighbors. Crates were unpacked again. Volunteers stepped in, and the whole block transformed into a proper welcome party for the veterans. Karen stood frozen, watching it all unfold, her influence unraveling with every thank you spoken. But just when we thought it was over, a city official pulled me aside and said quietly, "This wasn't the only neighborhood flagged. There's a growing list. And Karen isn't the only one behind it." That's when I realized this might have ended on my street. But the real fight was just beginning. In the days that followed, everything started to come into focus. The city launched a quiet investigation into HOA boards that had blocked or interfered with authorized military charity efforts. Turns out, Karen wasn't acting alone. She was part of a small network of board members across multiple communities pushing similar restrictions. Most claimed it was about preserving peace, but when you looked closer, it was really about control. Our HOA voted to suspend Karen, immediately pending a full review. Mr. Stein took over as acting president and promised full transparency going forward. The convoy team returned a few days later, this time with full community support. We held a neighborhood event with food trucks, music, and guest speakers from local veteran groups. Not a single complaint was made. In fact, people kept asking how they could help next time. Neighbors who barely knew each other before were suddenly teaming up to support the outreach. Even some of the folks who had backed Karen at first came forward and admitted they'd been misled. The once quiet street felt a little more connected after all that tension. Like we'd finally opened our eyes to how easy it is for fear to spread when no one speaks up. As for me, I'm just glad the veterans got the support they deserved that the convoy was finally seen for what it really was, a symbol of service, not disruption. That one delivery turned into something so much bigger. It exposed a problem, brought people together, and reminded us that being part of a neighborhood means more than just following rules, means showing up, standing up, and doing what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Because sometimes the real noise isn't from the outside, it's from the people trying hardest to keep things quiet.